What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Debby made landfall earlier this morning as an 80-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. Its eyewall finally got into shape, and it had some pretty significant stuff going on with the eyewall. And now, at this current point, it is moving through the Big Bend of Florida, approaching Georgia and South Carolina. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look at the radar over here, just to kind of take a look at the Jacksonville radar to kind of give an idea of what kind of rain is going on, what's going on with that. So we go right here. We have a ton of rain already falling in much of Georgia and even parts of South Carolina right here, and with bands starting to get closer to North Carolina as well. And the reason I highlight this is because this is going to be a very big flash flooding threat, and we already have a ton of flash flood warnings in effect for considerable flash flooding as tons of rain has already fallen. So we can go ahead and show you this. 7 and 14 inches of rain have already fallen. An additional 3 to 6 inches of rain are expected for parts of the Big Bend. So this thing, at least in terms of rain, is already overperforming, and kind of the graphics that we're taking a look at kind of shows that. And we're still looking at this being a very big flash flooding threat. This has always been the greatest threat in regards to this. But here's what we have going on. We're going to go ahead and show you quickly the public advisory right here. Debby expected to cause major flooding over the southeastern United States during the next few days. Its current minimum central pressure is 983 millibars. Maximum sustained winds are 70 miles per hour, so it has downgraded once again to tropical storm strength. And tropical storm force winds extend outward 140 miles from the center. But this is the graphic I wanted to go ahead and show you, the rainfall potential. They're now calling for, once again, 20 to 30 inches of rain for Charleston and areas to the south there. Like the Charleston metropolitan area is now looking at 20 to 30 inches of rain from this. And Savannah is still looking at 16 to 20 inches of rain. And now Wilmington, the Wilmington area, is now looking at 12 to 16 inches of rain from this, as that rain corner has expanded further to the north. We're looking at Raleigh-Durham now expecting to get 6 to 8 inches of rain. And we're even looking at parts of southern Virginia potentially getting flash flooding as well, which is going to be pretty bad. And the reason we're looking at all this rainfall is because this thing is expected to stall off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. And here's the latest cone to kind of show you what's going on. It's expected to continue to slow down its forward speed. It's only moving at 8 miles per hour at this current point. It's expected to come off the coast, near the Savannah region in Georgia, and then it is expected to slowly stay out there and turn towards South Carolina, where restrengthening is definitely possible. And it looks like the landfall point has shifted a bit further to the north from the Charleston area, now towards maybe Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which will end up putting the Wilmington area and areas in like Raleigh-Durham more in the line of fire, so we have to keep close tabs on it. Here's the discussion they're paying attention to. The key I'm paying attention to now is this thing going to strengthen over water once again? And it looks like the National Hurricane Center does want this thing to re-strengthen from a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm as it makes landfall near South Carolina. However, the further out it goes, the more it'll tap into that Gulf Stream, and the more potential it has to intensify much further. So that's all things we need to keep very close tabs on. And this has just been overall a very scary situation to watch from how this has been going on, because the flash flood potential, we now have a high risk of flash flooding from the Big Bend all the way to near Wilmington, North Carolina. Oak Island is one of those areas that's in there. I know Connor lives there, so he needs to keep very close tabs on that. Over there, I've been keeping a very close eye. There's going to be a ton of flash flooding in regards to this. And then we have a slight risk, pretty much, which is interesting, all the way up through much of the east coast of the United States. Tampa area around Orlando is in it still at this current point. But Washington, D.C., Richmond, Roanoke, Raleigh-Durham, Charlotte under that slight risk. Moderate risk of flash flooding is expected for Philadelphia. I'm not 100% sure if that has to do with Debby or if that has to do with some other system, but if you're from the Philadelphia area, you need to pay attention to this, because this could cause a ton of flash flooding. And remember this phrase, and we said it all last night on stream: turn around, don't drown. It only takes a few inches of rainfall to lift your vehicle and cause it for it to move out and for you to be trapped in your vehicle. So you need to pay very close attention to that. We talked a little bit about the physics of water. A cubic yard of water weighs 1,728 pounds, and water is not a soft element. So that's something you need to keep a close eye on. That's something you need to pay attention to. But overall, based on this satellite presentation, the core is still holding together relatively strong. It's if we can go ahead and take a look at this. There was a bit of wind shear that was kind of affecting the outer chips of the core last night, but it didn't get into the inner core, and it was able to strengthen up into a hurricane. But the outflow is still very impressive, and this is what I'm concerned about when this thing reemerges in the southwestern Atlantic, because this has the possibility to strengthen at a pretty robust pace, and we're already looking at that according to some of the forecasts from the National Hurricane Center. We can go ahead and show you the track models and the intensity. Track models wants this thing just off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina, and kind of depending on when this thing turns is when this thing will make landfall, and that'll depend on how long this stays over water. And if we go ahead and show you the intensity models, a lot of them have it going back down to tropical storm strength, but then starting to re-strengthen back up towards a strong tropical storm, especially as it moves towards the Gulf Stream and taps into that very warm water down there. So that's overall stuff we're going to have to keep close eyes on. Flash flood watches are in effect for much of these areas right here from Savannah all the way to North Carolina, and there is going to be potentially over a foot of rain from this, which if you are watching this from those flood-prone areas, you need to find a place that will have higher ground in case flash flooding does start or you're under a flash flood warning, because this is going to be coming down hard, and it's going to be coming down for quite a while. So we're going to have to keep close tabs on that. Let's go ahead and show you some of the conditions we're paying attention to with Debby to see how this thing will end up performing when it gets to the Gulf Stream. Here's the global sea surface temperatures, where it's going to be entering in. It's going to be entering in about an area of around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius of water, so a little bit cooler than what we were seeing on the Gulf Coast of Florida. However, it is still going to be quite interesting to see how this plays out. And the Gulf Stream is at 30 degrees Celsius, so you're going to need so if that thing emerges over that Gulf Stream, it's going to definitely have that opportunity to intensify if the wind shear does not get too strong. And that's the one thing we're paying attention to. Ocean heat content, still a big thing that we're keeping tabs on. We can give you the updated one for parts of the Gulf Stream over here, where this thing is going to reemerge. It's going to be entering OHC of around 100 or so OHC, which that's going to be definitely quite a lot, because the Gulf Stream is kind of an area that has very warm water that's carried by from the loop current, and it goes down much deeper than where Debby made landfall because of the continental shelf. There's no continental shelf on the east coast of the United States. It's a much deeper drop off on the coasts over there. Regardless, though, it's going to be entering very good waters and very deep waters as well for this thing to potentially reorganize and re-intensify. Let's go ahead and show you the wind shear very quickly. Where this thing is going to be emerging, there is going to be a little bit of wind shear according to this right here, but the wind shear at the angle it's at is definitely going to help enhance the outflow. In fact, we're seeing outflow going all the way up to Newfoundland, Canada, because it's being picked up by the shear, which is just still absolutely monstrous despite the fact that this thing is over land right now. And it's definitely something you're going to need to keep tabs on. And we'll show you the shear and the moisture forecasts as well, just to kind of give you an understanding of what we're looking at with Debby. But that's what we're paying attention to in the water vapor. It's going to be entering an area of very moist air coming off the coast of Georgia. The air that arguably the conditions that's going to be given over the southwestern Atlantic are going to be better than they were in the Gulf of Mexico, because this thing, regardless, still rapidly intensified from a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm to an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane. So that's pretty interesting to kind of talk about and keep tabs on regardless. But there is some other areas of interest that I am paying attention to, and I'm going to start shifting my focus towards them over the next few days, because yes, Debby's going to be a huge flash flood risk, and we are definitely going to continue to cover that to give you as much information as we can. But we also need to watch other threats, because the tropics are absolutely about to wake up. The MJO is over the Atlantic Ocean, and it's going to be staying there for the next 2.5 to 3 weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be definitely ramping up as time goes on. We're already in early August, and we've seen a 50% hurricane rate in the Atlantic Ocean, which isn't typically something you want to see going forward. So we're going to have to pay attention. Like, matter of fact, all the strong systems, because Alberto and Chris were both 40 miles per hour, all the strong systems ended up becoming hurricanes, whereas the weaker systems like that didn't get above 45 miles per hour ended up just fizzling out and making and dissipating, partly due to land interaction. But that's kind of something I was paying attention to. Regardless, though, we're going to go ahead and go Atlantic wide across much of this because we have several tropical waves that we're paying attention to. The first tropical wave is this one that just moved over the Windward Islands and is heading through the Caribbean Sea. As this is the area of interest that is tagged by the National Hurricane Center right here, and we can go ahead and give you that latest update right here for the NHC. It looks like they did shift the area of interest further to the west as this thing is moving at 20 miles per hour, and it's going to be slow to organize, but it is expected to start to develop either in the Caribbean Sea or Bay of Campeche over here. So we're going to have to keep tabs. Showers and thunderstorms associated with a tropical wave located near the Windward Islands have decreased and become less organized since yesterday. Any development of the system should be slow to occur during the next couple of days while the system moves westward over the eastern Caribbean Sea. Environmental conditions are expected to become more conducive for development as this system moves across the western Caribbean or the southern Gulf of Mexico. Still has a 10% chance of formation in the next 48 hours and a 30% chance of formation in the next 7 days. So ultimately, we have to keep tabs on that. And depending on how the ensembles react to this, they might increase or decrease that probability of development. So we're going to have to keep an eye on it. And it's this area of interest right here that's starting to see more convection flare up around it as well. We can actually go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit. I want to go ahead and move on to the western Atlantic Basin portion of the satellite because that's what we're seeing. And we're still seeing a much more extensive amount of convection firing up, especially on its southern side too. Not sure if that's going to hold or not, but the fact that this thing is trucking along and moving at 20 miles per hour is pretty interesting to pay attention to. Although the one thing I will say it will potentially limit it is if it moves too quickly, it might get caught up in the outflow of tropical storm Debby, and with the wind shear associated with that, that's what might end up kind of choking it off until it enters the Gulf of Mexico. But regardless of that, we're still watching it. We're still keeping close tabs of it. We can also show you the water vapor imagery in regards to this right here. It's going to be entering a relatively moist environment as it moves closer to the western Caribbean Sea and as this thing starts to potentially organize and develop. One thing ideally that it would need to do for it to develop much more than like a weak tropical storm is it needs to slow down quite a bit. It needs to slow down to about, I'd say 15 miles per hour would be a good one. Right now it's moving around 20, so it's a fast-moving tropical wave. If it slows down a little bit, and the steering currents weaken down a little bit, then it definitely could do that and have a better chance of development. But part of the reason the development odds are so low is because this thing is moving so quickly right now. But time will change, and this thing may change its speed, so we're going to have to keep tabs and pay attention to it. The other tropical wave I am paying attention to is the one in the eastern Atlantic that is coming off the coast of Africa. Let's go ahead and give you a whole Atlantic wide. It's this tropical wave right here, and the reason I'm paying attention to it is because it has good ensemble support with it in terms of its potential intensification and potential development. That's something we're paying attention to. Water vapor is going to continue this. There's still quite a bit of dry air in this part of the Atlantic Ocean over here. However, it doesn't look like it's going to be that much of an inhibiting factor for that long because the Sahara dust is starting to decrease quite considerably. There is still a little bit of Sahara dust going on in parts of the Atlantic. However, much of it's getting pushed up into Europe, and that's why we're seeing this waking up right now, especially with the Madden-Julian oscillation going on across much of the Atlantic. So, yeah, things really ramped up over the last few days, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to it, and we're going to have to keep very close tabs on that once again. Let's go ahead and show you some of the ensemble runs right now to kind of give you an idea. This is the 0Z European ensemble data. It wants this, essentially what it wants this thing to do is some of the ensemble supports, at least for the wave in the Caribbean Sea now, wants this thing to wait to develop until it gets to the western Caribbean Sea and then move into the Gulf of Mexico and potentially strengthen into a hurricane that will either impact the northeast coast of Mexico or Texas, which that'll be interesting to see if that plays out. And we have seen like the GFS kind of run a scenario of that happening every once in a while, but it's so far out that it's kind of hard to take seriously at times. But the European also has a lot more ensemble support for this tropical wave that's currently over in the eastern Atlantic right now. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this real quickly. Yeah, and it has a lot more ensemble support. Generally, anywhere from a tropical storm to a major hurricane is what the ensembles are forecasting. But I'm also paying attention to the track of this because it's kind of interesting to see how this plays out, because it appears to me that the stronger tracks have this thing keeping it out to sea, and the weaker tracks end up having it getting closer to the Lesser Antilles in Puerto Rico. So this does potentially pose a decent land threat over there, so we're going to have to keep close tabs on that if this thing organizes and develops the way it might end up doing. So that's stuff we're going to have to pay attention. Let's go ahead and zoom out on this. Let's go ahead and show you the GFS ensembles. GFS ensembles doesn't really have that much model support for the Eastern Atlantic wave. However, it does have some model support for the tropical wave in the Caribbean Sea. This is the 0Z as well, just to keep in mind. Actually, a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get the 12Z. No, I cannot. I can get the 0Z and move the forecast hour. That's better. That's a little better. Okay, perfect. And I'm curious, just out of curiosity, I want to see what the 6Z is. Yeah, the GFS is kind of having hard times with their ensemble runs. The European's been mainly the one that's been kind of keeping tabs on all this stuff right here. And generally, it's been doing a good job of showing intensification and showing development happening. Just the rate of intensification is a bit interesting, and I think that's something the models are doing better with. However, they still have their flaws and they still have their issues to deal with. Let's go ahead and show you the shear forecast and the moisture forecast courtesy of the European model. Let's go ahead and pull this up, and we're going to go ahead and use the 200 to 850 millibar wind shear right here. Here's what we have. This is a lot of this wind shear surrounding Debby is mainly due to its outflow that's kind of pushing into this Western Caribbean Sea. So that's the main thing I'm paying attention to initially. It appears to me as of right now, it's going to be persisting there for the next 36 to 48 hours, and as this thing stalls over much of over the southwestern Atlantic, it looks like the outflow will weaken and move out of the northwest Caribbean Sea and allow for more potential development to organize and develop as this thing pushes closer to the Yucatan Peninsula and Bay of Campeche over there. So that's what we're looking at. We are seeing a decrease of wind shear forecasted for that part of the Atlantic Ocean right there. And then as this system allegedly enters the Gulf of Mexico, yeah, it's going to have some relatively low wind shear to work with. So that's ultimately stuff we're paying attention to. I want to go ahead and zoom out and get an Atlantic-wide region just to look at the shear forecast for the main development region. Wind shear does quite frankly collapse in the next 3 days across much of the Atlantic Ocean, which is pretty interesting to say the very least. And that's why I'm so concerned about this, because we have a tropical wave moving off the coast of Africa, and that can easily take full advantage of that low wind shear and and those very warm waters in the main development region, which is pretty insane to say the very least. And we're going to have to keep tabs on that right there. Let's go ahead and show you the moisture forecast as well. Here's the moisture that we have pulled up for you. Moisture is going to be interesting. There is going to be some dry air to start off with in the northwestern Atlantic Ocean, so we're going to have to keep tabs on it. However, a moisture pocket does move into that region and potentially allows for this thing to organize and develop as it approaches the Yucatan, and then the Bay of Campeche and it enters there. There is a lot of dry air in the Gulf of Mexico, but that is expected to completely collapse and dissipate as the system starts to emerge in that region over there, but it's too early to determine what it will do right afterward, so we'll have to keep tabs on that going forward. However, in terms of moisture, this tropical wave is going to be in the Atlantic, is going to be entering a pretty robust moisture pocket, and despite there being some dry air due to some Sahara dust going on in that part of the Atlantic, it's going to have a robust enough moisture pocket to organize and potentially develop as we continue to look at this and as we get more information out regarding this. It's going to be an interesting next few days, not only with Debby with the flash flooding, but also with these other two tropical waves that have ensemble support. So we're going to have to keep close tabs on all of that. Just a reminder, there will be a stream tonight starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central Time. Once again, we really appreciate the support you've been giving us on the streams, and we will continue to provide top-notch coverage for you guys going forward. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more videos out like these. The goal of this channel, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather If you want to help support me and my channel, be sure to join my Patreon. It is in the first link in the description. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel, and we have some new Patreon members that are joining every day, so it would be much appreciated if you'd like if you join our ranks. Also, if you want to come hang out with us at Storms United, be sure to join our Discord server. We are talking a lot of Tropics back there, as well as a bunch of other fun and wacky stuff. So be sure to join. Link to that, folks, is right over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.